customer-focused technology leader. That's what
Yeah.
I saw on LinkedIn, on your profile.
Yeah.
How does this shape Graphlight's culture and business in general?
I always going to describe myself as a career software developer. And then I decided I wanted to start a company. So it's been an exciting ride and definitely learned a ton.
What is Kirk like when shit hits the fan?
In general, I'm pretty even keeled and balanced. But if I have a vision of what needs to get done, I'm going to see it through to get done.
I have a huge battle with marketing because I want everything to work now, today.
Yeah. I think the hardest part to learn has been not the operational stuff. It's the sales and marketing and just how hard it is to get exposure in a market.
What would be your advice for newbies or aspiring CEOs?
Focus on sales and marketing from day one. Have a thick skin. You have to be resilient. You have to be optimistic as well. When you do have stuff going in the right direction, don't assume it's going to be that way forever, but be protective over that, but also appreciate it when it does.
Welcome to Season 1 of the First Time CEO podcast. My first guest is Kirk Marple. He's the founder and CEO of Graphlit, with over 25 years of experience in developing scalable SaaS platforms. He has a rich history in building unstructured data platforms at companies like General Motors, Stats, and Kespry. Kirk previously founded and successfully exited RadiantGrid, with products sold to ESPN, Fox, and more. During our chat, we've discussed his transition from CTO to CEO, founder-led sales and marketing, Graphlight's evolution and pivot, customer-centric product development, Kirk's wins and challenges as a first-time CEO, and with that said, I invite you to join us. Hello. Hi, everyone. This is the first episode of the First Time CEO podcast, and I'm your host, Victoria. This is Season 1, everyone. And I'm very excited today to introduce you to my amazing guest, Kirk Marple. Hi, Kirk. How are you doing?
Very good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to have you, and I think it's going to be an amazing conversation, given your experience in tech and as a new CEO for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. So tell me, who was Kirk before becoming the first-time CEO, and what was the transition like, and who is Kirk today as a new CEO?
Yeah. I mean, I always kind of describe myself as a career software developer. I still love writing software, building products. I mean, that's what I've done for, 30 years now, probably. It's like the whole career. And so, I mean, I kind of did the classic, start out as a developer, become a lead, become a manager. And then I decided I wanted to start a company, but I had a business co-founder. And so that was kind of, I was always the tech guy and had a business partner to do that. So I hadn't been CEO for that whole 10, 12-year life of the company. And then was CTO of a couple different places after I sold that company, and then decided to start this. And so it's been 4 years now, and almost, I guess next month, I think it'll be 4 years. So it's been an exciting ride and definitely learned a ton. So.
What was the transition like? Did you feel something? Oh, I'm a CEO now. And what did you feel?
That's a great question. I think there's so much more you need to learn. And I think the hardest part to learn has been not the operational stuff. I mean, it's setting up your payroll and setting up the bank, and that stuff's not as big a deal, but it's the sales and marketing part of it, and just how hard it is to get exposure in a market. My old company was a much more enterprise sales, so it was like you knew who the customers were. You basically had to pitch them on their product. They could choose you or maybe 2 or 3 other vendors, and you just had to make them happy. And we'd go to trade shows twice a year. It was a much more kind of obvious thing. And I think this was something that now it's like there's so much more to learn. You can build a great product. They always say it's like the the second time founders, distribution is everything. And I think the first couple of years of the company, I made a lot of first time founder mistakes of, hey, build it and they'll come. And after we pivoted 2 years ago, I think I'm almost like a second time founder now, where I'm so much more focused on sales and marketing and that kind of side of it. So I've kind of lived both those lives in the last 4 years.
Oh, you mentioned so many things I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it all, but step by step.
Yeah.
You mentioned, well, sales and marketing. It's so important. And at Olympia, as a CEO, at some point I decided to, and I talked about it in the intro episode about the founder-led sales.
Yeah.
At some point I gave up on getting help, and I just continued doing it myself at all times, all the demos, all the calls by myself, well, with some help of customer support. So do you do the same? And what changed? You said that you became kind of like a second time founder. What changed and why? And how did you come to the founder-led sales and marketing?
Yeah, so we've kind of had two lives of the company. The first was building an application. And so we had decided, okay, we're going to build an application for end users who are what they call built world companies, like construction, engineering, railways. And so we were trying to sell them an application to basically save them time and money. And so that classic thing. I had a salesperson that was out there trying to get leads. He'd call into the, say, like technical person at a railway, trying to see, hey, can we help you optimize your data in a simplistic way? And so that it honestly just didn't work very well. And we'd find the classic champion of somebody that, okay, they would want it, but how do you sell it up the chain to their manager or to their VP of IT? And they'd be like, well, we already bought SharePoint, and why do we need this? And even though the person with the feet on the ground would be like, this is amazing, we need this, it was very hard to do the classic kind of enterprise sale and sell it up the chain. And so we just we had a lot of pilots and we got interest from the champions, but I think we kind of hit a point where we just weren't making enough progress, and it was not hitting enough pain that it would be a no-brainer for them. And I think part of it is, I mean, delegation. At that point, you think, okay, well, I'll focus on product and engineering. I can delegate that part, and they're just going to find people, and I'll help out with demos, and I'll do those kind of things. But we just weren't getting enough leads, and not enough people were finding us. We did trade shows, and I did a bunch of podcasts, and we were getting the name out there, but we just couldn't convert them. We decided at some point it just wasn't. We were just throwing money down the tubes, and we had spent a lot on product and engineering, and I ended up having to lay a bunch of people off. And so we basically stripped everything down to a really small team and then built it back up. And what we built back up didn't have a sales group. And it was really something. So that's kind of where that split was. And it was almost exactly 2 years and 2 years of the company life. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there was just some point where it's like, we're just not getting anywhere. And I need to be able to just take more hold of it, turn down the product and engineering knob a bit, and just get out there more.
And everything changed. Started getting leads, and what changed?
Yeah, and it was a different product too. And I think so we went from an end user product to a developer product. And so now, as you know, I mean, we sell an API. And so it's such a different model of selling because you want to develop a community. You want people to try out your software. You got to have free trial to people don't want to pay out of the box because they just want to kick the tires a bit. So you have to have good documentation. You have to have good customer support. All the things there are about generating that community for people to find you. And then when they do find you, you have to make it really easy for them to get running with it. And I think that's a whole nother thread to pull on, but I mean, there's so much in terms of good documentation, good SDKs, good samples that I mean, in this last 2 years, we didn't really get there until last year, really, of did we have enough sample apps? Was our documentation good enough? And we identified a few points of friction that were holding us back, really. And once we addressed those, things jumped more quickly. And so I think, and this is my first time selling a developer tool, but also being a developer, it's a bit easier because you're kind of like, okay, well, what would I want? I mean, it's like if I go and sign up for Stripe or whatever API, I know what kind of things I need to get started. So I think that was an easier transition to be like, okay, I mean, I'm just selling to myself essentially, and as long as I can make that work, then I mean, generally people once they onboard and they start using it, they're happy and it's sticky. And I think so that was a good decision for us to like say, look, and as a founder-led sales, you're focused on your persona and like, okay, I do all the developer relations. So I'm on Discord answering questions and some people are like, oh, is it just you? And I'm like, no. I just like doing this because we have a team. They're working on different things, front end work or finance or whatever. But I want to be in front of the developers so I can understand what they need and address their concerns. And we usually get comments of like, your support's great. Like you've addressed it at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night and fixed our problem. That's what makes friendly customers. And so we really try and lean into that.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about customer-oriented business later. Nobody knows your product like you do. It's my philosophy that founders, especially at the beginning, should sell their product. Nobody is interested more in selling your product than the founder. So you've been in tech for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what career milestones you think moved you towards creating your own company and becoming a CEO with a tech background?
Yeah, I mean, I started really early. And so I graduated college at 19 and started being a developer right out of college. And so I think I had a number of years working for other companies. I mean, small and big companies. The first couple companies, you'd kind of call them startups now. I mean, they were small companies in around the Washington, D.C. area, and then went to grad school and then went to Microsoft. And so by the time I was 30, I mean, I had already had like 5 years of experience, or really more, I guess, I mean, maybe 8 years experience, and had my master's under my belt. So I kind of hit almost like a peak at that point of like, okay, I'm a dev manager at Microsoft. I mean, I loved Microsoft. It was a great experience, but I started to feel out of touch with who we're selling to. And I was in Microsoft Research for part of it, but even then, when I was in Windows Media, it was hard because I couldn't talk to our customers, and I couldn't like it felt weird to have this disconnect between product and engineering and things. And at Microsoft, there was a split where product did their job, engineering did their job. And the thing I love about startups is product engineering is kind of one thing. And it's a collaborative effort of understanding, I mean, what do customers need? And you can iterate week by week I mean, we don't plan 6 months out, really. I mean, we have general directional kind of planning, but you don't know what someone's going to come up with. I mean, our customer is going to be like, hey, I have this great idea that I need for my project, and we realize that could work for everybody, and we slide that into the next release. And that's I think where the fun comes from. Is it's a much more dynamic environment, but also it's more product integrated than just purely a developer role that I had been for years. So when I got started, when I left Microsoft and decided to start the first company, it was, I mean, I knew nothing. I was just a developer, really. And I mean, and you learn so much. We had no money. We were just like, it was right after the 2000 crash. and we were just scraping by. And I even had to go back and do contracting work for a while, and until we actually got our first big win. But then it started to take off. I mean, and we were selling into HBO, Fox, ESPN. Like, we had great name customers for our product. And there were companies that said, look, if you guys have a bad day with your product, we have a bad day. Like, I mean, so there's so much riding on this product. And I like that. I mean, I think that you can't get that at Microsoft. I mean, we can, but not as one small team. So I think I learned so much of dealing with customer support, dealing with sales, and doing demos. And went through ups and downs. We ended up selling the company after, I guess, 11 or 12 years. And then I worked for them for a couple of years after the sale. But yeah, I mean, you can never get that experience anywhere else. I mean, really, it's without just doing it from start to finish.
What are the differences between being the CTO and VP of product and CEO?
Yeah, I'd been VP of engineering and CTO, but it's still very, very product focused. But I think obviously there's the operational business side. It's hiring and firing, dealing with the money. And I mean, that part of it comes with the CEO role that you wouldn't ever get in any other, like a CTO or VP role. I think I've always been the vision for the product. So I think sometimes there can be, I mean, that can be hard. I mean, if you're a technical founder that has a vision, how do you delegate that to your other like VP level or manager level, people like that? So everybody has to be on board. But I think the CEO is a much more stressful job, just because your job is to keep everybody's paycheck coming. I mean, that's really, I mean, they always say like a CEO's job is to not run out of money. And that's like your only job. And so I think having to lay off people, having to raise money, no one else really has that stress than at the other levels. And I never had that as a CTO. Like, I mean, I was just heads down coding and dealing with customers at my old company, and I would kind of know where the finances were, but that also can bite you in the butt. I mean, we ran into some issues where there were financial things that were happening that I wasn't aware of. I mean, of how quickly we were spending money at the old company, and that kind of came to a head, and then kind of took this over at the end. So, but yeah, I think it's been interesting. I mean, I think there's so many different pieces of it that you need to learn. And it's not obvious. There's always people, and they talk, if you have a good mentor or have people that can help you. I didn't have a ton like that, really. It's like I had some good people around me that I'd known before, but I wouldn't say I had like a mentor that kind of guided, which I know other people have. I see a lot of these like 20-something CEOs that are getting started and getting money, but they also have a lot of adult supervision around them. And so I think already having been deeper in my career, I didn't really have that. And a lot of my peers were C-levels in other companies. And so I think it is a little different where you're not getting coached. You're kind of just like, okay, you got to figure it out.
So how did you learn? Did you read? Did you talk to people?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, I think I read the founder sales book. I read a lot of those kind of things. Read a lot about developer relations. I think I sought out information as much as I could, and just tried to learn as much as I could quickly. Hired a couple good consultants, especially in the marketing front, because I think the biggest part is like it always seemed like a black box to me. Like, how does email marketing work? How does web marketing work? Like, it just seemed like it seemed like it shouldn't work in a lot of ways, because it's like I don't read spam emails or most of my email, and so one of the things you learn is, I mean, even with people who know what they're doing, it still doesn't work like most of the time. And I think that's where we ended up wasting a lot of money of just thinking, okay, I'll hire somebody to handle email marketing. They know what they're doing. And at the end of the day, like, it didn't do anything.
And they
yeah.
and they don't. And then you're like, why they don't do their job? And money is wasted. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to learn and do it myself. And they're like, I don't have time for everything, to do everything.
And it's a great point. I ended up having to learn it all. I mean, I had to learn how does SEO work? How does our web traffic handle? And there were some glimmers of things that I learned. Like one of the big things we learned with our email campaigns were nobody replied, but they were clicking on the links. And we were able to track and I just hadn't thought of this myself. It's kind of obvious, but to track the links from the email back to your website with like the UTM parameters and stuff. And I was like, oh, so people are actually engaging, but they're engaging silently with the email traffic. So it's actually more of a guiding them to our website, which puts more effort to say, look, we better have a really good website and be really clear. And it's not about what's the message. And I used to try and put way too much in the emails and try and explain things really quickly, thinking, okay, well, nobody's responding, so I better tell them in the first email. But that was the one thing I learned in this last process was it's really not about that. Like, it's really about putting up a sign on the side of the road, like that someone just needs to be a little familiar with your brand, and then they can go investigate themselves. But then there's the whole conversion side of it of, okay, they see your website, what do they do then? And I think we did a really good job on like all the things they say, like have a free tier, let people start up, let them get running. We did all those things from day one, pretty much. And then we put in our paid tiers. We started out with a cheap tier that people could get started with. Like, I think we did a best practice for pretty much all that. But it's okay, if somebody signed up but then didn't use the product, where did they drop off? And I think that's a whole other story of, how do you optimize that? But a lot of times, if you don't have a lot of volume, you don't know where to optimize. If you're only getting 100 people to your site a day, it's not enough signal. And so
you have to do ads, and then you have
yep.
to optimize stuff, and it's testing all the time, and
yep.
what's working, what's not. And
yep.
I was so frustrated with this. I have a huge battle with marketing because I want it to work now, today.
Yeah.
I don't want to wait. I don't want to test. And at some point, we had a partner doing marketing. That didn't work eventually. So it's like, where is the key? What do we? And then it's cool where you have a ready-made product and it doesn't cost you that much. And you can do a free tier. We couldn't do it because OpenAI was hell of expensive with that.
Right.
So if we let people just type whatever and abuse the system, and then we have like thousands and thousands of bills to pay, it's like, oh no, we don't want that because we are bootstrapped, and even if you're not bootstrapped, you don't want to waste money. So we did waitlist.
Yeah.
And until we got enough of interest, then we started to free tier. Everyone was asking about free tier, but we didn't do it until last year. The prices dropped down, and then we make it a marketing campaign around it.
Yep.
So
it's an interesting one because we were probably even too aggressive in what we were giving away, like too liberal. When we first started, we have this kind of credit model approach of, okay, you charge someone number of credits, and it's LLMs plus compute and storage, kind of all rolled into one number. And I literally took it down to 10% of what it was. And so it was just people were using it, but they weren't converting. And because it was just, they were happy with the free tier. And I was like, okay, that's not our long-term goal. Like, we have to have something at some point. So I ended up, I can't remember, maybe 6 months ago or more, just chopping the credit quota to 1/10. And it's then driven, because even our first paid plan is just $49 a month plus usage. So it's not that expensive. If you're going to be building a business on this or whatever, that should be even a hobby. That's our hobby tier. It shouldn't be a blocker. So, and we did have people trying to game the system, which is an interesting topic too, of people just signing up, trying to create new accounts, run some things through on the free tier for free, and
then quit.
Yeah, they were using us for OCR of documents, and they'd run it through, get the output, and then just go away until once they hit their free tier limit. And I ended up having to block some addresses and a bunch of emails, and thankfully we used Clerk for authentication, and I was able to create like a kind of like a deny list of some sites and things. And the one thing, for some reason, they were trying to OCR documents from archive.org for some reason. And so I ended up just disallowing ingesting files from there. And so then people got wise to it. And I guess maybe somebody took us off a list of something somewhere, and it just stopped. And so, but I mean, it was costing us hundreds of dollars. I mean, at some point of just, we were getting just a flurry of, I mean, it must have gotten on some bullet board somewhere. Somebody posted like, hey, use this, sign up, you can get it for free. So that took some time. It took like a week or two of just to shake out. And it's stuff like that you never really think of, and you're not going to do it in your MVP until somebody actually starts using it. But you can't anticipate it. You have to deal with it. But it's kind of product market fit, because like, hey, it was useful. I mean, people found it useful, so it's almost a good signal in a way too.
It's a learning curve as well.
Yeah.
So it's one more thing to learn, and then you can get some data from it and
yep.
make it work better later. So let's give the audience a little bit of context. How did you come up with the idea of Graphlit? Where did that's a cool name, by the way. Where does it come from?
Yeah.
And in a nutshell, what is Graphlit, if you would explain that to a non-technical executive?
Yeah, I mean, so we are a developer tool. So we are here to accelerate the development of integrating some types of data with AI. And it's a way to say, I mean, like you would integrate with Twilio in the past to help make phone calls and text messages and not have to build it yourself. We're a platform in a similar way, where we do a whole bunch of work to take data from different sources like Google Drive, web scraping, Slack, email, sort of compile it into a form that the AI models can leverage it. And then you can build things like Olympia, like a Chat GPT type of like tool, but also you can do things like extract information and build knowledge graphs. We have people generating like healthcare related knowledge graphs from like drug studies and things like that. So we're essentially just an API. You can give us a URL to some data or connect us to some source. We'll automatically ingest it and pull it in the background, and then give you an API to search over that data as well as chat with the data. And then you just kind of pay by how much data is flowing through the system. It's easy to build demos with a lot of open source tools, but to have something that's running 24/7 in production is a lot harder. And the requirements of a service, which people are now this year and late last year realizing, I just want this as an API. Like, they're just like, I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to build a new model comes out. I don't want to have to think about it. Like, we'll support it same day, next day, and you just get a new option to try. Or some new technique comes out for optimizing the data, we'll give it to you. And I think we're now seeing people kind of focus on the as a service API, which was our vision. I mean, my vision really from day one. And it was probably a little early, really. I mean, because I think people were still wanting to build it themselves. And we often say, like, we compete more against do-it-yourself, really, than anything else. And now there's a couple vendors out there we're competing with, but feature-wise, since we've been around and doing this for so long, we have a much wider feature set.
AI products just growing like mushrooms. How do you think you will be able to compete? Because sometimes to be first, it doesn't necessarily mean to be better. So what do you think you will keep as a competitive advantage for users to stay with you?
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, there was the first mover advantage from some of these open source projects, and there's 2 or 3 that are big name that got VC funding, and now they're trying to productize. I think we kind of leapfrog that and said, look, we're making a service. We're not trying to like give it give it away for free or let you do it yourself. But we're offering like a bunch of sample apps and our SDKs and all that as open source. So it's more of how you can use us. We'll show you that code and give that away for free. Um, and but I think I often say it's really about the data and the organization of the data. That's our moat. I mean, connect to everything, organize it in time and space and in this knowledge graph kind of oriented way, and then consume it in a bunch of different ways. And I think the good thing is once you have connection to all those data sources, like you've already connected to Google Drive, you're already connected to Slack, like we don't have to rebuild those. Like we're not building data sources as much now because there just aren't a lot of new ones really out there. But the things we are building now are how do you consume that data on the flip side of the equation? And chatbots were really the first thing. And I often said that's just the low hanging fruit. Like chatbots are not going to be the way that people consume this data through our API. And what we're now seeing is AI agents. And it's instead of having a human directly query the database essentially that we build, the knowledge base, it's going through an agent. And that's where we really see the growth of this is, and it's also benefits us because it's just an API. Like your agent just talks to our API and can do a bunch of things. So we released, I think like 30 or so agent tools, we call them, which are little kind of focused, essentially functions that can do one thing, like find people in your knowledge base by an email address, or go ingest from this Slack channel and pull in all the data from the Slack channel. So they're like task-oriented tools. And that's really where a lot of there's so many different agent frameworks popping up these days, and they're not that complicated per se. Like they're just, a lot of them are, I mean, very similar to each other, or they're copies of each other, but we're saying, okay, there's a level beneath that says, well, what tools are they going to call? And that's where the heavy lifting gets done. And you have to have the knowledge to provide for RAG to these tools, to these agents. So I think we're not seeing viability kind of diminish at all because I mean, it's really becoming something where everybody is talking about 2025 is going to be the year of the AI agents. We're positioned perfectly now. So, I mean, you can give us all your data, give us the end user data into it, create a knowledge base from it, and then connect your agents and have to do less work. And we're already model agnostic. So, I mean, Gemini 2.0 Pro is supposed to come out like today or tomorrow. I mean, we can basically ship it the same day, next day. And so that whole, we're assuming that's going to commoditize, and it has a lot. It's really the other part of it of like, I mean, how do I create a filter to only bring in email that has this label in it and create an automatic label for that? It's like, that's the kind of workflows that pulling in the data from Slack isn't the hard part. It's the, what do you do with it after that? And how do you organize it and search over it and consume it? And that's really what we're focused on.
I like the approach of how easy it is to set up the tool. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how partially we win at the market, mm-hmm. because our customers are like, I register and I have the agents and they're already autonomous and do mm-hmm. everything for me. I don't have to do, because I use several and try to test AI tools, and sometimes mm-hmm. the setup is so complicated that I'm like, no, cancel. No, I don't want to deal with this. I don't have time. I need to work. Time is money, and so on and so forth. Yep. I think it's a great advantage among the competition, and that's how Graphlit and wins. One of the things how you win the market. What are your channels, and what works for you to deliver the information to your potential users, to acquire new users?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I mean, I think from our channels, I would say, I mean, like Reddit and Twitter are probably two of the best. Our blog has done pretty well in terms of getting picked up for SEO. Um, Podcasts, honestly, I mean, I probably did like 25 podcasts over the last couple of years, and I still get people being like, "Hey, I saw you in this podcast. I now want to chat about your product." So I mean, it's like an evergreen way to do it. And so, and even then, I mean, we should probably be repurposing those podcasts into blog posts, and there's more we really should be getting to. But I think if somebody needs it, I think the biggest thing is SEO is still a big struggle. And I don't know if it's a Google issue, or I think everybody probably has this, but just getting the pages indexed properly and not getting dropped from the index. Um, we have two sites. We have our changelog and we have our documentation site. And I've been trying to get them fully indexed. And for some reason, like Google won't. Like they'll index like 30 pages of it. And then even just this last week, they dropped like a bunch of pages from our index. And I don't like that's the part where I'm at a loss. Like I don't know how to get past some of that, but there's a tool I've been using that automates the pushing to the index, and it had been working for a while, and it was like adding stuff, but it's like Google stopped at some point. They were like, and so some of these two sites, like our main website's fine, but for some reason they don't like our changelog and the Gitbook documentation, um, which I think is hard because there's like hundreds of pages that I mean we could have up there getting search, and they get no traffic at all. And so it's as much, I mean, as much as you try to get SEO right, like it's always a work in progress. The strange thing is we're starting to get hits from ChatGPT, web search, and Perplexity as well. So some of the LMs with search are starting to become an SEO route. And so we're going to see what we can do to optimize for that as well.
That was an interesting thing with ChatGPT. When people would create something like ChatGPT or something with ChatGPT, and they just skyrocketed in the Apple Store just because of the name, just because of the SEO. So
I mean, at this point, it's interesting. Like even terms like RAG as a service, which I mean, I think we should rank higher for. It's like it's still hard to break through those kind of things. So I mean, I think there's way more we can do to try to optimize on that front. But I think I mean the Twitter thing, just kind of replying and putting your name out there, dropping links to the blog, and it almost becomes like a full-time job because I mean. I haven't been keeping up with Reddit as much lately, but I mean, for a while I was like doing a lot more Reddit posting, but I still see people find our links through Reddit and come to the website. So I think that it's evergreen content that's still out there on Reddit, which is good. And I think with Twitter is such a hard, like, I mean, it's really hard to get reach on, and we only have like I think I have like 1,200 or 1,100 followers, and the company does as well, but it's I mean unless you have like 5k 10k it's really hard to get awareness, and I've been trying to spend a lot more time on it, just like every comment about RAG or whatever I would try and be in the part of, and it definitely works. Like I mean I bumped our followers probably by a couple hundred over like previous month, but it takes time. It really takes effort.
Yeah, social media take a lot of time. And someone told me a few weeks ago that you should do social media. If you don't do social media today, nobody knows about you.
Yeah.
So social media channels, you know, I don't know. Facebook is not in the game so much anymore. Twitter, Reddit, and I understand why it works for you. Yeah, and email.
Yeah, email's an interesting one. Like we did a campaign, I think before the holidays, because I remember we stopped for the holidays, and it was driving web traffic. And the one thing I want to do on our website is we don't have like a solutions section that tells you what can you do with Graphlit. And that's really the part that's missing. And so I want to get the website updated a bit. I was hoping to do it last month, but just kind of reorganize it a bit, have like a product section or platform section, a solution section, pricing is a separate section, and kind of break it in more of a hierarchy. Because right now it's just one big page um, that you kind of jump down. So I think that will help. And then once we kind of redo that, um, then I would like to do another email campaign because I think maybe it's those people that maybe aren't developers, but they're like product managers or people that are like thinking about building products, but they don't know the technical side. They would rather have the solutions page, I think, to know what you can do with it. And I think that we're kind of missing. And we're not targeting those people right now. We're just targeting developers on what they can do with it. So it's a never ending cycle, but it's like I know that there are things that the other big thing is YouTube. And I mean, it takes so much effort to do it, but I think I mean, I probably want to hire somebody for that, but it's just getting a DevRel to build demos. I've been focusing on the building the demos. Like every feature we add, I build a Google Colab notebook for. And so we have like 50, 55 notebooks now up on GitHub. And so pretty much anybody, if they ask me something, I'll be like, hey, here's a notebook example. And if we don't have one, I build one. And that has helped a ton for developer tool because then you're speeding up that time to implementation. And then I'm in the process right now of redoing our docs. And we'll see if maybe that helps with SEO. But we had it's hard to, I mean, number one, as you build stuff, it's hard to keep the docs updated, like current. But as we released our SDKs, we've now, 4x'd our surface area of what we need to document. Because now we have to document the Python version, the TypeScript version, the .NET version. And that's where we get a lot of our questions is, I mean, how do you integrate it? And the last thing I'll say is I actually built this cool chatbot kind of interface to it where I inject our documentation and our API into it, and you can ask it to generate you sample code. And that I think I want to get more people using that because it actually saves like a huge amount of time. And so you don't really even need to read the docs anymore. You could just now use our own product essentially to give you code that you can integrate with.
Yeah, people are lazy. They need everything simple and fast. 100%. There is overload of apps and tools and documents and information in the internet. So I want everything fast and simple and very easy and simple UX, UI. Don't bother me with more information than I need. So yeah, demos. When we started doing demos on YouTube and when we added case studies on the website, we had a spike of new. And it's also easy, like you say, hey, you just send it out with newsletter, with an email, you post it on socials. But also for us, it was very difficult to reach people. Absolutely incredibly difficult. And when I started having calls with power users, I would be asking them, did you receive the newsletter? Did you see our news? Did you see our new feature? And they're like, oh, no. And I'm like, what? We have it for a month already or 2 months, So what we did, we started notifying them right in the app where they work every day. And it would be highlighted in little green, like unread message.
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
I'm like, oh, you can't miss it now. So we would do all the same channels and the in-app notification with the link where we want them to go and to read it about, So that became much simpler because they're like, I don't need emails. My emails are clogged. Entrepreneurs don't have time. So best channels for us is LinkedIn and in-app notifications.
Yeah, that's cool.
And every other channel is supporting.
And that's what becomes hard because I mean people don't really live in our application, like our developer portal, because they're connected to the API. They're really only going there if they want to test something or see logs or check billing. And so it's a harder channel. Like it's like that. Like we use Linear for product management. and they always have their little pop-up of like essentially their change log, which is great because I would never look at their newsletter. I mean, I'd probably just swipe it and never look at it. So, and even with our newsletters, like, I mean, we have a couple thousand people on the newsletter list, but you know, the open rates aren't great. And but Discord is growing. I mean, we're up to a few hundred people now. I think that's where I try and get enough information, and we do all our support there. We'll do private Slack channels if people want as well. We have a couple of those, but yeah, it's a work in progress. But then I look at some of the other companies that have like a couple thousand people in their Discord, and I'm like, how did they get started? I mean, how did like, and I think there's this gap of awareness where you get a couple of these hot projects that either, I don't know, through their Y Combinator company or they got buzzed somehow. And I think there's a bit of a gap in reach that I mean, it's still something I'm trying to crack is like, how do you go up that power up to that next level of like, okay, how do you get 5K followers on Twitter? How do you get 10K, 25K? How do you get 1,000 people in Discord?
How do you get 100,000 followers on YouTube? 1 million.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen these people who they basically just become influencer types, and I mean it's like a full-time job too. So I think, I mean, we're trying to find a balance where we don't just become like an influencer account. We're actually, I mean, trying to release stuff, and I try every time we release a new blog or a demo or something, I like post about it on Twitter, try and drop a link in a newsletter site or Reddit or something like that. And so, and the stuff does work. I mean, it works. It definitely works for sure. But it, like we did a 30 days of Graphlit, I think in September or October, which is interesting. So like every single day, build a collab notebook and ship it and post on Twitter about it, post whatever. So it was kind of neat. I mean, it was a way to generate a lot of demos. And so maybe we'll do another one of those later this year.
Let's get back to the first-time CEO role. What is your biggest win and biggest failure till this day, and how you overcame it?
Career-wise, or just at Graphlit, just in this company?
Just in Graphlit during this 4 years.
Yeah, okay. I think that since we're still early, the biggest win is really, number one, getting the first paying customer. I think that's always such a big hurdle to get over. And then really is just to see consistent revenue growth. I think that's really the positive that keeps me going, of seeing like, okay, it's still upward. I mean, it's still growing. It's not as fast as I want it to, but I mean, you keep tweaking it, keep turning the knobs, and every month gets better. I think we're still early enough that there's not a huge win, I would say, yet. But I think from a sort of failure standpoint or those kind of parts, I think just having to do layoffs 2 years in was the worst part, because you take it personally. You're affecting people's livelihood. You're taking away their paycheck. They have to go find new jobs. Like, that is completely the hardest part of being a CEO, I think. And they're all friends. I mean, I brought them here from other companies that we had worked with together. And knowing that like we went for 2 years and didn't succeed, and know that you led that charge and failed, like, is not easy. So I think the good thing is, by hunkering down and in the last 2 years of the company, trying to pull it from that depth, and actually now having revenue, now having success, and for anybody who still is a shareholder in the company, I'm able to do it for them. And so I think that's, I guess, been the biggest positive, is to kind of pull it out of failure and now get back above water, which, I mean, I could have just shut it down 2 years ago and said no, but I still believed in the vision of it. And I think now it's to see the success that's come out of that has been a big win.
And your challenge today as a CEO is?
The biggest challenge is just what we were talking about. It's awareness. How do I 10x, 100x people knowing about Graphlit? And that's what keeps me up at night right now, is since I do a lot of the development, the hands-on development myself, especially for the platform, I have more control of that. And so I know that, hey, okay, I can spend another 4 hours tonight solving this problem. Like that's a more tangible problem. But it's like we were just saying, how do I get 10x the number of people to my website today? Like I don't have full control over that, or at least don't know how to solve that. So I think those are the biggest challenges today, because what we've shown is glimmers of product market fit. People have a problem. We show them our API. They look at our pricing. They sign up. They pay us money month after month. Like that's pretty much what you want, like from a company like this. Now, is it? I mean, can we upsell them? Can we help them use more? Like we'll work on that problem. But it's also they're building more products, which should drive growth. Um, the thing that I mean is like, okay, how do we get like how do we just replicate that across more companies, across more products? And it's a good sticky product. And so I think we've shown that, but it's just now, how do we become a leader really in this space? And I think we're seeing it grow, the space grow, but market share is something I want really intensely over the rest of this year.
Customer-focused technology leader. That's what I saw on LinkedIn, on your.
Yeah.
How does this shape Graphit's culture and business in general?
I think it's part of it is support, but part of it is also just listening to customers for product reasons. And I always look at it as like you have to be opinionated in this market. Like you can't just wait and adhere for everything they ask and just try and shoehorn it into a product. Like so, I have a very defined vision for the product that I think is the right approach. But I'm going to assume that I'm maybe 10% wrong. Hopefully only that much, maybe more. But you have to give time to listen to the customer, to incorporate their feedback and merge it into your vision. And I think that's how the best companies do it, is like you have to have a vision that, I mean, I've been around long enough and done enough of these kind of products that like 80/20 rule is going to be pretty good. Like I know the feature, like we had a really good feature set when we've started the company, and we've pretty much achieved that. If I look back at some of the original design guarantees and stuff we wrote, like we pretty much built everything we wanted. Now, where does the next year go? Where does the next 5 years go? I think just incorporating that feedback from customers and also doing the research on the market is, I think that's a big thing I spend a lot of time on, is just where are the customers going to be in next year? Like we could have gone all in on chatbots last year and ignored agents, but I really saw that the market was changing and that a lot of even the things I built a year ago, people aren't even taking advantage of yet. And they're just getting wise to it now, like report generation or the audio publishing, like Notebook LLM from Google. We had done a demo of that last March, like, and nobody cared. And so it's like, part of it is, I mean, somebody could have taken what we built and built an app like Notebook LM last year. And it's all about reach and just exposure, where you got to find the right people that want to build the right things. So I think it'll be interesting, I mean, to really see how this grows the rest of the year.
Graphlit supports Olympia's long-term memory.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you personally helped Obi, my co-founder, the tech co-founder, integrate it into our systems. So do you do it often? Do you help customers personally, or it's just a rare occasion?
I do it very intentionally. And so I am the first line of contact typically on our Discord or email. But I tend to, I mean, one, I hear the problems right away if there are problems. Number two, I think having quick turnaround on customer feedback, like it's not just going to some email server, like going to, or like you're not just on a support list like an intercom or something like that. That makes customers happy. And typically, I'll drop everything to deal with a customer support issue. Like to me, it's like customers are the number one, and number two, and number three, and number four. And it's like whatever I was working on, if it wasn't customer related, can wait. And I think that so far, customers, they respond really well to that because whatever time of night it is or the weekends or whatever, I'm a developer. Like if I have a problem and I'm blocked, I don't want to have to wait till the morning to like have to deal with it. Or if it's happens to be after 5 p.m. Pacific, like I gotta wait till the morning. Like I hate that. So I figure the least I can do is be responsive. And and I think, I mean, the other part of it is, I mean, since I'm more the backend developer, most of the problems we have are, okay, I don't understand how to use your API. This doesn't seem to work. But we also have proactive where I see every error in the system. Like we have it go to a Slack channel. So somebody could be doing, like Obi could be doing something and have an error, and I'll see it in Slack before he asks me. And that helps a lot. And so sometimes I could be like, oh, I'm seeing you're getting this error that you might not even realize that you're getting it if the customer doesn't have good tracking of errors through the system. And sometimes I can even fix stuff before they even notice. And so I think just being proactive about kind of support and interaction um, is the culture that I really want with our customers. And I think it's a super intentional thing that we're trying to build.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% and have been building the culture since the beginning. Customer is the priority.
Yeah,
Everything after. Because they pay us money.
yeah.
We are serving them. We can't build anything around without this touch, that special intention to serve people. But that's essentially why we built our tools to help people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that right there that's the reason I left Microsoft. Like, I didn't feel that touch with the customer, that I felt like I was doing things, but I wasn't like, if I didn't do my job, would anybody care? Like, or like, would someone lose money or something? I don't know. Maybe I just get driven by that pressure, but there's kind of that buzz from being able to be like, okay, you got to be reactive and stuff, but it also makes those people happy. Like, they don't have to wait all day. They're relying on you and they're paying you decent money to do it.
Yeah, I think also that people forget that people sell to people. We're all humans. And that connection beyond the very formal one, understanding that there is a person on the other part of the screen or email, helps to have that special approach where understanding stretches out of just the bare minimum that you do for your customer. And that's what people really value that.
It's a long game too. I mean, you never know. They may not want to be your customer this year, but maybe they're going to come back, get a new job, and then they are going to 10x what you could have done with them the previous, I mean, with their new company. And so you never know. That's why it's like, I'd rather be exactly like that. Just, you got to pay attention to them and work with them.
Absolutely. You mentioned Microsoft several times.
Yeah.
So, was there something that helped you with Graphlit? Something that you learned during your work at a big corporation?
I think some of it's just my software architecture kind of knowledge or intuition, I think, came a lot from those years at Microsoft of how to build software. Because I had worked for small companies, I mean, like under 100-person companies for most of the time before that. And grad school, they don't really teach you software architecture and building big products. And I think just knowing how to work in a team, knowing how to sort of slice up a project into smaller pieces, I learned a lot there, and just refine my skills as an engineer. So I think a lot of times I go back to like kind of that. To me, it was kind of like an additional grad school almost. It was like I was thinking of doing a PhD, but instead I went to Microsoft, and it was about the same length of time of 6 years. And so I kind of look at that as like my professional PhD in a way.
What is Kirk like when shit hits the fan? In the professional setting.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think in general, I'm pretty even keeled and balanced. And I think I try and have more of a friendly kind of culture where everybody can kind of say what they need to say. But when shit hits the fan, I'm definitely will want to get the way that, if I have a vision of what needs to get done, I'm going to see it through to get done. Like I trust my intuition enough that sure, I might be wrong, but I've probably been right 9 out of 10 times in the same situation before. My biggest thing I'd like to do is I want to make sure I hear what people are like their concerns are or when things are happening, um, because I want to like learn, and I always go into things like, okay, if this seems screwed up, like I'm probably going to think of a way out of it, how I would solve it, but I want to get some intuition of what other people think. Um, but the problem is, in a lot of team situations, you may really only be the one that ever had this similar experience before. And so it's like that balance between mandating things and incorporating sort of as a democracy to get input from people. Um, I think this, like I've never had it work where you you have to incorporate information, but it's probably more the 20% than the 80% if it's something that is in your sweet spot of interest. So, um, nobody's perfect, and I've been through some horrible business things before. Financial things at old company and just customers dropping us at the last minute, and that's the stuff that it stresses me out. But uh, it's how you recover from those kind of things is really the big thing, because we had a really interesting project we were working on with Hewlett Packard and what was it, and Starbucks, and it looked like a great perfect project for us, and then they ended up just literally cutting it, and we were just left with like hundreds of $1,000s of potential revenue that we could have had, and you have to wake up and go, okay, well, how do I move forward from this? Like, I can't just shut it down and or just give up. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to make it through those times. But the more times you've made it through those times, it's easier, because we always know that you bounce off the bottom and then you keep going. And I've been through it enough to know that.
And Graphlit future plans in our rapidly developing AI industry?
I think for us, we're continuing to kind of close some gaps, maybe in some functionality to help out the ex-Carbon customers, focusing a lot of the agent infrastructure, like what is different from chatbot infrastructure versus agent infrastructure. Going to lean into that a lot over the next couple months. Doing some things around private cloud deployments. So for better security, having like an instance of Graphlit in your own Azure account is something we're working on for later this quarter, hopefully. And then, hopefully raise some more money by the end of this quarter, and maybe early next quarter, and continue to grow from there.
What are some couple of lessons that you learned as a first-time CEO?
Focus on sales and marketing from day one. Like, it is the slowest thing to do. It's probably, I would say for a technical founder, it's the hardest thing to do, because it's not anywhere near my skill set, really. It's not product engineering. You can treat it like that a little bit, but it's a slower burn. Like, I can implement a new feature overnight or on the weekend. I can't solve our SEO problems by Monday morning. And I think that's the biggest thing to learn, is I kind of keep it as a background task. It's like you kind of keep stoking that fire in the background, because it can be easy to get upset or just get frustrated by how slow it is to like change. And so that's the biggest thing. And it's also then it becomes harder to delegate. Like we said, is like you hire somebody and you blow N number of grand in a month or two and have seen nothing. How do you prove that it's actually doing anything and it's not going to get better next month? Like, I'd rather take on that and take that risk myself and try and work a couple extra hours or something than throwing money out the door, which I've done too often in trying to solve these problems.
What would be your advice for newbies or aspiring CEOs?
Have a thick skin. I think it's not easy. As you definitely know, you have to be resilient. You have to be optimistic as well. Like, it's something where if I didn't care about this vision and didn't believe in it, and almost to a delusional sense, they always say, I think you kind of have to be that to be a good startup CEO, because it's going to be hard, but you got to take your wins too. Like when you do have stuff going in the right direction, don't assume it's going to be that way forever. But I mean, I think be protective over that, but also, I mean, appreciate it when it does happen.
I'm super grateful for our conversation today. Thank you very much, and I wish you good luck on your CEO journey. And
yeah, thanks so much.
For Graphlit. And you guys, I'm going to ask you to like, comment, and share this episode if you liked it. And also, if you want to be my podcast guest, I'm going to leave the link to the application. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.